Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Shalom and welcome to today's Daf Yomi Niddah Daf Ayin Gimel. We're on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis, 6 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, Hani halachas ninu? Are these halachas? Hani kroyin ninu? We learned these halachas from a pasuk. The Gemara is referring to the halachas of the cycle, the monthly cycle of an isha, which combines two separate categories. There are the Yimei Niddah and there are the Yimei Ziva. If an isha sees dam initially, she's tummy for 7 days, regardless of whether she does or doesn't see any more dam during those 7 days, after which she is toivel and she is tar. After the completion of the Yimei Niddahs, begin the Yimei Ziva. For the next 11 days, she is considered to be in her Yimei Ziva. After the completion of those 11 days, she reverts back to Yimei Niddahs. Now, that is not to say that she's a Zava or that she's a Niddah without seeing any Dam. It is merely a term used in potential. If she is to see Dam during those 11 Yimei Ziva, she has the halachas of Ziva applied to her. If, however, the Yimei Ziva have completed, and she reverted back to her Yimei Niddahs, certainly she's tar at this point, until she sees more Dam. If she sees Dam, the Yimei Niddah begin anew, and all the halachas of Yimei Niddah apply. Now, what is the halacha if Isha sees Dam during the Yimei Ziva? So if she sees one day, say she sees the first day of her Yimei Ziva, she is now Tameh, she is a Zava Ktana, and she is called a Shimeres Yom Kineged Yom. She needs to observe the next day, B'Tahara, to correspond to the first day of Tumah. She needs to ascertain, at least in the beginning of the next morning, that she is Tar. We apply the halacha of Miktsas Hayom Kekule. Part of the day, in certain respects, are considered to have a significance, as though the whole day was kept. She can be Toivel, and she is currently Tar, but her Tahara is pending. We have to wait and see if there are any more developments throughout the day. If she maintains her Tahara throughout the rest of day number 2, then she's Tar. If, however, she sees Dam again on day number 2, then this Re'iyah, this Dam, is Mitzdaref L'Mafreya. It's combined retroactively to her yesterday's Re'iyah, and she is a Zava retroactively, and she needs to do Shmiras Yom Keneged Yom on day number 3 all over again. And the same system repeats itself. If she's Baidik herself, she's Tar, she's Toivel, now she's Tar. However, she has to wait and see what happens on the rest of the day number 3. If she maintains her Tahara, then she's Tar. If, however, she sees Dam again on day number 3, now she has evolved into a higher state of Ziva. She's called a Zava Gedola, which requires Sfira Shiva Nakim. She needs to count 7 clean days, and afterwards she's Toivel and brings a Karban. So the Gemara before it stated that Rav Lezer and Azariah held that this halacha, the hilcha is achadasar yom shebein niddah le'niddah, these halachas were derived from halachal Moshe Sinai. Were given to Moshe on Har Sinai and were not learned from Psukim. Ask the Gemara, Hani halachas ninu? How could you propose that these halachas of Niddah and Ziva were given to us as a halachal Moshe Sinai? Hani kroyin ninu? We have Psukim. We derive it from a drash from Psukim, as we see in the following brayso. The San we've learned in the brayso. Yachal haroya gimel yamim betchilas niddah ritzufim. To Zava, I would think that although we know that there are Yimei Niddah and there are Yimei Ziva, and they both have different halachas, they are totally different categories. If a Isha sees during her Yimei Niddah, she is tummy for 7 days and she's toivel. She doesn't need to do Sfira Shiva Nakiyim, she doesn't need to bring a Karban, regardless of how many days she sees within those 7 Yimei Niddah. She can see 3 days in a row, but she's still only a Niddah. But I would think to say that that only applies when she sees 1 day. But if she's to see for 3 days in a row, Gimel Yomim B'Tchilas Niddah Ritzufim, on 3 consecutive days, that is a very serious Re'iyah, and perhaps she would have a din of a Zava, even though she is right now currently during the days of Niddahs. Uma ani Makayim. When do I apply the pasuk of Isha Kesiya Zava? If an Isha will have a flow Dam Yeh Zava, she'll have a flow of Dam. And the pasuk continues and says, Shivas Yomim Tia B'Nidasa. For the next 7 days she will be a Niddah and not a Zava. That is strictly B'roya Mechad. If she sees 1 day, then it's only a minor experience and she has a din of a Niddah. Aval Araya Gimel Yomim B'Tchila Tia Zava. But if she sees 3 days, she is certainly a Zava, and she carries with her all the stringencies and the halachis of a Zava. Talmud Loimar. That's why the Torah teaches us B'Layes Nidasa. This is the pasuk that's referring to a Zava. That a Zava has unique halachas, special halachas separate than the Hilchas Niddah. The Torah specifically states, when did that occur? When did the Re'iyah of Ziva occur? B'Layes Nidasa. Not in the time period, not in the time frame of the Yemei Niddah. So the Torah is clearly teaching us that in order for her to be considered to be a Zava, her Re'iyahs cannot take place during the Yemei Niddah. Regardless of how many times she saw, even if she had 3 Re'iyahs in a row, if it took place in the Yemei Ziva, she's a Zava. If it took place in the Yemei Niddah, she is merely a Niddah. Continues the Brisa. Al Nidasa. The pasuk describing a Zava says Al Nidasa. She will have a Ziva Al Nidasa, meaning in close proximity to the Yemei Niddahs. Says the Gemara, Samach Nidasa. It needs to be immediately following the Yemei Niddah. For his first 7 days, she is a Niddah. She's considered to be B'Teich Yemei Nidusa. The day following that, day number 8, is the Yom Haziva. If she's to see 3 days, meaning the first of the Yemei Ziva, Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, she's a Zava G'dola. Ve'ein li ela samach l'nidasa. We only see from here that the first day following the 7 Yemei Niddah is considered to be a Yom Ziva. And if she's to see 1 day, she's a Shemeres Yom. 2 days, she's a Shemeres Yom K'neged Yom. If she's to see 3 days, 1, 2 days, 1, 2, and 3 of Yemei Ziva, she's Zava G'dola. Fine. That's only because it's Samuch, it's immediately following the 7 Yemei Niddah. How do I know? Muflag l'nidasa yom echad minayin. Suppose she skips a day. First day of her Yemei Ziva, she didn't see anything. It was only once day number 2 arrived that she saw dam. Is that also considered to be a Re'iyah during her Yemei Ziva? Minayin, how do I know? Talmud Loimar. Torah teaches us, Oy ki sazov. This is a riboy. The Torah is adding a word to teach us that not only in the day immediately following the Yemei Niddah can she become a Zava, but even if she skips a day, if she starts sitting only on day number 2, then it is also considered to be a Zava as well. For instance, if she sees 2, 3, and 4, she's a Zava G'dola. Continues the Gemara. Fine, so I know 2 things. We know that it needs to be Samuch. We also know that if she skips a day, it's fine. Meaning, the day following the Yemei Niddah, the first day, Yom Aleph, is a Yom Ziva, and so is the second day. If she sees only beginning from the second day, Yom Beis, and then Beis, Gimel, and Dalet, she sees for 3 days starting from day number 2, she's a full-fledged Zava. However, how do I know if she only starts seeing day number 3, day number 4? Is that too considered to be a Re'iyah B'Teich Yemei Zivusa? Ein liyala yom echad. She skips a day. Menayin l'rabbi muflak shnayim, shloisha, arboa, chamisha, shisha, v'shiva, shmoina, tisha, asara, menayin. How do I know if she is to see only on day 3, 4, 5, 6, up till 10? Now actually the Brisa uses the word muflak shnayim. If she sees on day 2, meaning that it's the second day of Yemei Ziva, which actually we already learned from a pasuk before. We said Oiki Sazav is teaching us that if she sees on day 2 of Yemei Ziva, it's considered to be a Zava. So Taisa says that the Gemara, that the Brisa is just lumping it together with the other numbers, although really day 2 we've already discussed earlier. So in any case, the Gemara is looking for a makar, a source, to teach us that day 3, 4, and on, up until day number 10, is also considered a full-fledged Yom Ziva, and if she only begins her Re'iyos on those days, it is also considered to be a bona fide Re'iyah of a Ziva, and carries with it all the halachas of Ziva. How do we know that? Menayin. Amris, you'll say like this. Ma matzinu, just like we find, B'Revi, on the fourth day, Shehu Sheroi l'Sfira, it is fit for Sfira. V'Roi l'Ziva, and he's Roi, she's fit to become a Zav on that day. Meaning like this. We said before that the first day of Yimei Ziva, that's simple, that it could become a Zav on that day. Meaning, if she sees Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, the first 3 days of her Yimei Ziva, she's a Zava G'dayla. What happens to a Zava G'dayla? She needs to do Sfiras Shiva Nekim. She needs to count 7 clean days. When do the Shiva Nekim begin? If she saw Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, certainly on the 4th day, on Dalet, day number 4, begin the Shiva Nekim. Now, the Gemara is saying like this, Mamatzinu, just like we find that day number 4, who is Roy, who is fit, he can potentially be part of the Shiva Nekim, part of the Sphira of the Shiva Nekim, which will be applied, which come as a result, as a outcome of a Re'iyah on day 1, 2, and 3. Day 1, 2, and 3 are Machayiv, obligate Shiva Nekim, which begin on day 4. So just like day 4 can be reckoned as one of the Shiva Nekim for a Re'iyah that began on day 1, and similarly we find that the Torah is marber that day as being also a Yom Ziva, meaning we will marber, we included from the pasuk of Oisi Kisosov, that not only if she begins her Re'iyah on day 1, on Aleph, and the Re'iyah stretches Aleph, Beis, Gimel, as she told me, not only then, even if she only begins her Re'iyah on day 2 of the Yimei Ziva, meaning her Re'iyah began on Beis, and it stretched over to Dalet, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, she is also considered to be a Zava G'dayla. So just like we find that day Dalet has 2 components, has 2 properties. Number 1, it can be considered as a Yom Sfira, the first day of the Shiva Nekim, which will be applied to a Re'iyah that began on day Aleph. On day Aleph, continued to day Beis, to day Gimel. Aleph, Beis, and Gimel requires the Sfira Shiva Nekim starting from day Dalet. So just like it has that property, and also, the Torah also gave it a different halacha, that since he can be considered as one of the Shiva Nekim for the Re'iyah of Aleph, Beis, Gimel, so too, he has the potential, Day Dalet has the potential to be a Yom Re'iyah Ziva himself. Meaning, even if she only begins her Re'iyah the 2nd day, instead of Yom Aleph, she begins Yom Beis, and she sees for 3 days, Yom Dalet is part of that Re'iyah. It's Beis, Gimel, Dalet. It's just like you find that Yom Dalet has 2 properties. Af ani avi, so too I will include Ha'asiri. The 10th day, Sheroi l'Sfira, he's also fit to be considered as part of the Yimei Sfira regarding a Re'iyah that began a Yom Aleph. Because again, if she sees Yom Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, meaning her Re'iyah began on the first day of Yimei Ziva and stretched for 3 days, she became a Zava G'dayla on that account, and now she needs to do Sfira Shiva Nekim. The Shiva Nekim begin on day 4 and stretch till day 10. So day 10 carries within it a potential, a koyach, to be considered as part of the Sfira Shiva Nekim for a Re'iyah that began way back on Yom Aleph. So too, V'roi l'Ziva. So too, since it has that property, it has that component, it has that aspect, it has that Maila to be considered as one of the Sfira Shiva Nekim for a Ziva who began her ears on day number 1, so too, it will carry the potential to become a Yom Ziva himself. So this is a Mamatzinu, just like we find by day 4 that these 2 properties are linked. Having the ability to be counted as one of the Shiva Nekim for a Re'iyah that began on day 1 is linked with the potential of being able to become a Yom Re'iyah on its own. And therefore, even if the Re'iyah began only on Beis, when Beis, Gimel, Dalet, it is considered a proper Zava G'dayla. So too, day 10, since it has that property of being considered being reckoned as part of the Shiva Nekiyim for a Riyah that began on day 1, Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, which requires Shiva Nekiyim, which stretches till day 10. Similarly, it will have the power, it will have the din of a Yom Ziva for a Riyah that took place on that day. Continues the Gemara. So now once we know that days 1 through 10 are all considered to be Yomei Ziva, what about day 11? Is that too included? Umanayim the rabbis achad asar. Talmud loymar, yes, beloy eis nidasa. The Torah says that the Yomei Ziva is removed from the Niddah period. So it's a Rebbe which teaches us to stretch it a step further over till day 11. Says the Gemara, Yochel, I would think to say, Shani mar b'af shnei masar. If so, why stop at 11? Go on to 12. Says the Gemara, Amris, no. You must say not like that. Lav. Why not? Says the Gemara, why not? Why are you differentiating? Why are we discriminating between day 11 and day 12? Why are you including day 11 and excluding day 12? Says the Gemara, there's a reason for it. Why do I prefer day 11? Because now let's recall, in the beginning of the Brisa taught us that the day immediately following the Yomei Niddah is eligible to be considered a Yom Ziva if she sees on that day. The Brisa then added that even the next day also has that property. And we learned that from the pasuk of Oiki Sozov. Meaning, if she sees on days 2, 3, 4, she skips day 1. She only begins her Re'iyos the following day. Day 2, 3, 4 of Ziva, that is considered a proper Re'iyah of Ziva. Now, in that case, when she sees Beis Gimel and Dalet, when do her Sfira Shiva Nekiyim end? Till where does it stretch? So let's make a simple calculation. If she's holding already at day 4, she saw Beis Gimel Dalet, so it's 4. It's the 4th day into Yomei Ziva. Add another 7, so we landed on day 11. So we see that day 11 carries with it the potential to be considered as one of the Yomei Sfira Shiva Nekiyim for a Re'iyah that began on day 2, which we included from the pasuk of Oiki Sozov. So therefore, it is logical, it is a svar to say that when the Torah includes another day, meaning we got stuck at 10 and we wanted to go further, and we had a pasuk tell us, yes, you can go further, it is logical to say that the pasuk is including another day, but only up until 11. Why? Because 11 has the property of a Yom Sfira with regard to a Re'iyah that began on day number 2. It was 2, 3, 4 plus 7 equals 11. Again, Marbani, I will prefer Echad Asar. Why? Sheroy L'Sfiras Oikisazov. He has the potential to be considered, to be eligible, to be counted as one of the Yimei Sfira for a Re'iyah that began on base, which we included from the pasuk of Oikisazov. However, Moisiani, I'll exclude Yud Beis. Day number 12 doesn't have that property, doesn't have that advantage. Shein Roy L'Sfiras Oikisazov. He cannot be counted as one of the Shiva Nekiyim for a Re'iyah that began on day 2. The Re'iyah that began on day 2, meaning 2, 3, 4 plus 7 lands you at 11, and 12 is past that. So therefore, we're only going to be marber day 11. So in conclusion, this is the makar, this is the source that an Isha post Niddah, after completing the Shivas Yimei Niddah, she has 11 days, Achadas Yom of Yimei Ziva, which carry with it all the halachas of Azava, but no more than 11. Now, what happens during those 11 days? We only know that if she sees 3 days of those 11, she's a Azava G'dayla. We learn it from Psukim and previous sugis. Shnei Yomim Minayin. How do we know that if she only sees 2 days, she's also Azava? Perhaps not Azava G'dayla, but Azava nevertheless. Tamalai Yemei. The pasuk uses a plural, Ashen Rabim. Yemei is 2. Yoim Echad Minayin. She sees only 1 day. How do we know that she's a zava? We see from the word koil that the word koil includes even one day of Riyah. Tmeya, the pasuk says, Kol yimei zoiv tumasa kimei nidasa tia tmeyahi. We learn from there that she is tamei. She is tamei just like a niddah. Kimei nidasa tia tmeyahi. So what do we learn? What do we derive from a niddah to a zava? Says the Gemara, Melamed shemetame es boil kiniddah. There's a pasuk by a niddah which teaches us that somebody who's mishamish with a niddah, her niddas, her tumah, carries over to him. He also becomes tamei. So too by a zava, why does the Torah compare the tumah of a zava to a niddah to teach us this halacha that a boil zava will also become tamei? The Torah adds the word he, which is coming to be made to exclude. He matame es boila. Only a zava has the power to be matame her boil, one who does tashmish with her. Ve'ein hazav matame mashu boil. However, a zav, a man who is a zav, he will not pass over tuma to an isha who is boil. Says the Gemara, why does the Torah have to teach us this? Why would I entertain this thought? Why would I think? Why would it enter my mind that a zav is matame if he is boil? Says the Gemara, I would think to say that we can derive a zav from a zava with a kavachim. Validinu, we have a kavachim. Umahi she'ena matama briyas kibiyamim. Since the isha is not matama briyas kibiyamim, meaning we know that an isha, in order to become a zava, she needs to see 3 times, but they need to be in 3 separate days. She has to see Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. If she were to see, suppose, 3 times in one day, it only counts as 1 riyah. She needs her riyahs separated, scattered, distributed amongst days. However, an ish, a man, he is matama beziva b'riyahs. The tumah of the isha is reckoned according to riyahs. If he is to see twice, 3 times, even in one day, he has a halacha of a zav. So since we find that an isha who is not matama b'riyos kibiyamim, she's not matama through riyos, through sightings, as she is matama kibiyamim, she has a restriction. Her riyos need to be categorized, enumerated through days, connected with days. Still, she has a chumrah, matama es baila. Although she has a restriction, she has a limitation regarding riyos. Still no. Nevertheless, we see that she's matame es baila. Who, a man, shematame briyas kibiyamim, he has a mile, he has an advantage over an isha. He is matame through riyas. He doesn't need to wait until the next day. He can matame lump sum. He does a few riyas in one day, he's already tame. So he has a mile, he has an advantage. He has a stringency. Einay din shematame mashu boil. Isn't it obvious? Can't we say that isn't it logical? Surely that he should also have the chumrah of the isha and be matame somebody who is boil. Therefore, Torah has to come and teach us. Talmud loymar hi. Torah is teaching us an exception. He matame es boila, ve'nazav matame mashu boil. That's where Torah has to come and teach us. No, this halacha matame es boil is only strictly regarding an isha and not regarding a zav. He is not matame mashu boil. Continues the brayso. Umenayin she oise. Mishkav Moshav, the Haggah on the side removes the word shehu. It's referring to he. Manai shehi oisa mishkav Moshav. How do we know that she can be matame her seat, her couch, something which she sits, mishkav something which she lies on, and Moshav something which she sits on, to become a very, very high level of tumah of amatuma? How do we know that? Talmud loyma k'mishkav nidasa. Torah is being marba a higher grade of tumah regarding something which is considered her mishkav. Now, perhaps this stringency of Mishkav Moshav will only apply to a Zava Gedolah who sees 3 riyos. Since she is so advanced in her tumah, so she also has the din of Mishkav Moshav. Shnei Yamim Minayim. How do we know when Isha only had 2 riyos? We'll also have the din of Mishkav Moshav. Now, this is a different pasuk than the pasuk quoted earlier. This is a pasuk regarding Mishkav Azav. That the pasuk is telling us that a Mishkav, anything that a mishkav that the zava will lie on, will become tamei tumas mishkav, and in that pasuk, the pasuk also uses the words of kol yimei. So the Gemara says, Yimei will teach us shnei yomim. Tamad loimi yimei, even a zava who only saw twice, 2 days, will also have the din of mishkav. Yomei echad minayim, what if she only saw 1 day? How do we know that? Tamad loimi kol yimei. So the kol is being marba even one riyah. Continues the price. U'menai shesaferes echad le'echad. How do we know the halacha of shemeres yom k'neged yom? That if an isha sees 1 day or 2 days, she needs to be shemer the next day b'tahara to correspond to the day of tumah. She is not tamei 7 days. She's only tamei up until the shmira of the next day. How do we know that? Tamad loymar yiyala. The Torah is being marbe, is including another halacha yiyala that she needs to do shimur when she saw 1 day. She needs to be shemer the next day. If she saw 2 days, she needs to be shemer the third day. Continues the price. Yachal tispar shiva l'shnayim. Fine. She sees 1 day, and she needs to be shemer the next day. If she's tahar, fine, she can be tayvel, and she's finished. What if she sees 2 days? Perhaps I would think that a 2-day riyah will obligate her to do shiva nekiyim. Yachal tispar shiva l'shnayim. If she has shnayim, she has 2 days of riyah, she has to be saved shiva nekiyim. Why would I think to say that? Because we find that halacha by Azav. V'dinu, let's make a kaval chaymer. Umahu shein sefer echad le'echad. Since we find by a ish, we don't give him the halacha of shemeres yom k'neged yom. There's no halacha of counting 1 day to correspond to the other. So he has a leniency. Nevertheless, sefer shiva l'shnayim. By an ish, by a zav, after 2 re'iyos, he already needs to be sefer shiva nekiyim. So although he has this limitation that he doesn't have the halacha of shemer yom k'neged yom, meaning if he only sees 1 day, he's merely a bal keri. He doesn't need to be shemer yom k'neged yom. This is the shita of Basil mentioned in Daf Ayin Beis. So he has a leniency, he has a kula. Nevertheless, he has a tremendous chumrah that once he gets up to number 2, now he's obligated to do shiva nekiyim. Certainly, he, an isha, shesaferes echad le'echad. If she merely sees 1 time, she already needs to do shemer yom k'neged yom. She has a tremendous chumrah above and beyond an ish. Ein adin, isn't it logical? Wouldn't you say certainly shatispar shiva l'shnayim, that she would have the same chumrah, at least the same chumrah as an ish, and once she sees twice, then she already needs to do shiva nekiyim? Talmud loymar yiyala. The Torah is telling you yiyala. In this case, we're darshaning yiyala as a restriction, that if she only sees once or twice, then she is limited to the halacha of seferes echad le'echad, shatispar echad le'echad. She only has to be shemer yom k'neged yom, and she does not have the additional halacha of shiva nekiyim. So let's quickly summarize the braysa. From the pasuk of Beloyes Nidasa, we learn that the Yimei Ziva are outside of the Yimei Niddah. There's no din of Yimei Ziva during the Yimei Niddah. From the pasuk of Oiki Sazov, we learned that not only the day immediately following the Yimei Niddah, even if she skips a day, she begins her riyah on Beis. She sees day number 2, 3, and 4, Beis Gimel Dalet. We're marbe from the pasuk of Oiki Sazov that constitutes a riyah b'mei zivasa. What about the rest of the days? From then till day number 10, so Gemara made a mamatzinu to be marbe that as well. What about day number 11? So we had a rebuy from a pasuk of Beloyes Nidasa to include even that day. Why do we prefer day 11 over day 12? So Gemara worked it out, and the Gemara said that there's an advantage for day 11 to be included in the Yimei Ziva versus day 12. How do we know if she sees only 2 days, she's a Zavaktana? That we learned from Yimei. What about 1 day? From Kol. What about that she's Metame her boila? From Kol Yimei Tmeya. What about that she's Metame Mishkav Umoishav? That we learned from Kamishkav Nidasa. Is she Metame Mishkav Umoishav even if she only sees 2 days? Yes, because it says Yimei. What about 1 day? Yes, from Kol. What about an Isha that sees only 1 day? Is she obligated to do Sfiras Yom K'neged Yom? Yes, and that we learn from Yiyala. Now, the Gemara also went through the differences between a Zav and a Zava, as follows. A Zav, his Re'iyos are dependent on Re'iyos, not on Yamim. If he sees 2, 3 times, even within 1 day, it is considered to be separate Re'iyos. An Isha, on the other hand, her Re'iyos are dependent on days. What other differences do we have between a Zav and a Sava? If a Zav sees one day, he's merely a Balkari. He does not require to be Shem Yom Keneged Yom. On the Isha, however, she sees one day, she's already considered to be a Zava Ktana. She's Metame Mishkav Moishav, and she needs to be Shem Yom Keneged Yom. What about two Riyos? So by a Zav is actually a Chumrah. He's already considered a full-fledged Zav, and he needs to be Sefer Shiva Nakim. An Isha, on the other hand, if she sees 2 days, she's merely a Zav Ktana. She needs to be Sefer Yom. She needs to be Sefer Yom Liyom, Shem Yom Keneged Yom. What about 3 Riyos? So by an Ish, that obligates him to do Shiva Nakim and to bring a carbon. He's already a full-fledged Zav who requires a carbon. An Isha, the same token. At this point, she needs to Shiva Nakim and she needs to bring a carbon. So regarding 3 Riyos, an Isha and an Isha are very similar. Continues the Gemara. Amar le Rav Shmaya le Rav Abba. Ema, perhaps I can say, be a mama to have a Zava. By day, if she sees by day, she's a Zava. But Lalyo, she only sees at night to have a Niddah. Only during the Yemei Niddah can a Riyah at night be Metamaha. But a Zava can't become Tameh by seeing Dam at night. Why is that? Because in the pasuk of Ziva, the Torah mentions day, Yomim, Yemei. So perhaps the Torah is teaching us that Tumas Ziva can only take place by day. Amalei, Alecha Makra. For this reason, the Torah teaches us to counter this argument. The Torah teaches us Al Nidasa. The pasuk describing Tumas Ziva specifically states that it happens immediately following the Niddas. When is that? Samach Nidasa. It's close to Niddas. Samach Nidasa Emas Havi. What is immediately following the Yemei Niddah? Belelia, it's at night. Because if an Isha sees Dam, she's Tameh for 7 days. When the 7 days are over, at nightfall, she can be Toivel and she's Tar. Her Yemei Niddah are over. And if the Torah says that the Yemei Ziva begin immediately following, in close proximity to Yemei Niddah, when is that? That's at night. Because Karla Zava, and the Torah calls her a Zava. So you see clearly that if an Isha sees Dam during her Yemei Ziva, regardless of whether it's by day or at night, she is considered to be a full-fledged Zava. Concludes the Gemara. Tana Devel Yo. They learned in the Raisa, in the Medrash of Eliyahu, some say it was a Tana, some say it was the actual Eliyahu Hanavi. Kol hashoyna halachas b'chol yom. If somebody learns halachas daily, muftach loy is guaranteed shu ben olam haba. That he is destined, he has a portion, he is destined for the world to come. Shenemar halichos olam loy. The ways of the world are his. Al tikri halichos. Don't read halichos. Ella halachos. But rather halachos laws. If a person, the pasuk is teaching us, if a person studies, he learns the halachos, olam loy, then the world to come, olam haba, is destined for him. It's his. Now, the Maral explains what is the significance of learning halachas every day, that he's guaranteed to be a ben olam haba. What is so special? In reality, every Torah that a person learns earns him a chelik olam haba, and a very great portion of olam haba. So why specifically halachas? Says the Maharal that unlike other types of learning, halachas have a uniqueness. Since they are clear, they are straightforward, there's very little room for deviation. It's different than learning a sugya when you suggest one thing, you ask something else. Until you get to the clarity, until you conclude, it's a long road, it's a circular route. But halacha is clear-cut, it's absolute, it's very direct. There's very little room for deviation. So a person who takes care to learn halachas every day, he's guaranteed a direct route to a great portion in Elam Haba. Maharsha asks, why does the Gemara bring this Chazal specifically here at the end of Masechta Niddah? And he offers a very novel approach. He says that we've learned many halachas. The Masechta was full of different shitas and different kinds of cases. Very complicated Masechta. But we all know that today, most of these halachas, most of these different scenarios, different shitas, don't really apply to us in a practical sense. since we are noyeg chomer der Zera, that every isha, regardless of where she is at, may Niddah, may Ziva, regardless of how many days she sees, we consider her to be a zava. Even if she sees a mashu kechardal, she has to keep the halachas, the stringencies, the chumras of a zava gedola. She needs to keep Sfira Shiva Nekiyim. So why then do we immerse ourselves and involve ourselves in so many different halachas and cases that are just not practical in today's time? Says the Maharsha that even if it doesn't have a halacha l'maisa practical manifestation, nevertheless it's Teres Hashem, it's Chachmas Hashem. It's what Hashem had in mind for us. It's the Ratzon Hashem. It's an emanation of His goodwill that He had in mind for us, Kaviyach, to run our life according to the halachas of Torah, and thereby be zeiche to achelik l'haba, by being mekadesh us and retiring ourselves and elevating ourselves in this world by applying the various halachas to the various scenarios, various situations. So even if they don't actually ever come into being, merely immersing ourselves in this Ratz, in this Chachmas Hashem, in this Ratzon Hashem, we are connecting to the highest form of Veikus to Hashem. And therefore, we are certainly earning and being Zeicha to a very great portion of Olam Haba. It's not just a Chelik Olam Haba, it's a Ben Olam Haba. We are planted, we are belonging in Olam Haba. It's the highest form of Olam Haba reward. And this is very similar to what the Gemara says elsewhere in Sanhedrin regarding the halachas of Ben Soira and Meira. Even though it never happened and never will happen, still in all there is a mitzvah, there's a schus. It's a privilege for us to involve ourselves and immerse ourselves and envelop ourselves in this Chachmas Hashem and connect ourselves to the Eibishter. And as the Gemara there says, even though it never happened, never will happen, the Roish Bekabel Schar. Hadron Lach Tenoikis, Uslikala Mesechas Niddah, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov.